We've discussed the risks of sleep deprivation and even some tools to help you sleep better. But what if you're getting your rest and you're still tired? This week, we explore the 7 types of rest that you need to get in your life.
Hey, Carlie.
Hello. Hello, hello.
Not
How you doing
hello.
today?
It sounded like Siri. Um, I'm cool. I am, catching my rest today and just been trying to veg out and not do much of anything, honestly. So this is the only thing that broke my stride, but we here.
We here. Look, and it'll be a quick one, so all the better.
Yeah, it's we've been talking about how this year thus far has been pretty good and productive, yet having some peace and rest as well. But sometimes, I don't know, I mean, you probably identify since you came up with this episode, but sometimes it feels like even though you're technically rested, it's still like there's something you need to catch up on. And for me, that's what I'm always like, man, I feel like I need to go on a trip or I need to do something. But it just feels like there's still something you need to like get your battery all the way charged up outside of just more sleep. Um, how do you feel about that?
Man, no, I'm shaking my head like a bobblehead because yes, absolutely. I think there are so many things that, like, man, I'd be mad sometimes when I know I get 8 to 9 hours of sleep and I wake up and I'm still tired. I'm like, dog, something got to give. And so that's actually like really why I want to talk about it today because I'm like, I know there's like physical rest, like sleeping and making sure we do that, but like, what happens whenever you do, consistently get your good sleep, like the amount and all that, and you're still kind of tired, you still kind of feel exhausted. Like, what do you do outside of having a medical condition? Like, what are the things that we can do in our control whenever you're still tired after, getting enough sleep?
Yeah, and I wonder what that even means, like scientifically as well, because, to like physically be tired, um, it means like your body still has like processes to catch up on that it gets while you're in the process of being asleep. But then with other types of, feeling tired, is that technically still tired, or is that just the fact that there's all these different things going on in your body that need to be rejuvenated at some point? Maybe just to like help you feel your best. Because even I don't know if it's even tired as much as sometimes it's just like it feels draggy. Um, so I just kind of point that out because I'm like, I don't really know the technical like terms of like how does it really all work together, but I just know when it feels like kind of blah or kind of dragging. I feel like being tired, I'm putting that in air quotes, like automatically is just like how you kind of describe that.
Yeah, and I would too. I'm not an expert with no MD or whatever,
Hmm.
PhD, but when I was researching, they do call it fatigue. Like any
Oh,
type of like
okay.
tired or exhaustion is like fatigue, and they also do say exhaustion, like emotional exhaustion. And
Hmm.
it's like I
Hmm.
guess that is a scientific term for all of these different things we can be feeling.
Yeah, and then like when you think about how times you may be like overthinking something or like, you might be in another zone or another mood, but like it makes you feel tired just thinking too hard. So definitely all of these things are connected. It's not just about the fact that man, maybe I'm getting enough hours at night, but I might be depleting in other ways or something like maybe faster or in a different way throughout the day, to where I just need even more rest, where it's like it doesn't seem like I should need more, but here you are. So let's get into it. You said there's 7 types of rest.
Hmm.
Um, and so I guess we should start with physical since um, that's when you're just like chronically tired, sleepy all the time, like sleepy, like your eyes are closing. Um, have you ever had like one of those sleep headaches where it's like you're trying to stay up and you kind of get like a dull headache, you might get kind of dizzy. Um, you have some other signs down here that look like they're real serious: muscle weakness, slow reflexes for sure, impaired decision making. Yes, I think the worst time to drive is when you're tired versus
Bruh,
on any types of drugs. And
bruh.
then moodiness. Yeah, I definitely have stories of like my mom used to work third shift as a child, when I was a child. And I just remember like during the daytime, like, dang, I'm like, why does mom always have an attitude? But now it's like, that's the only
She
time
was
she had to
tired,
sleep.
bro.
Right. We was making noise and stuff all in the house. But yeah, I definitely understand that. Like you're really irritable when you're tired. Um, and I think when you're physically fatigued, everything just feels like you're moving kind of slow too. Um, and you're just not like at 100% capacity for sure.
Yeah, like real sluggish. I think my worst, like I know people talk about getting hangry, but when I'm
Mm-hmm.
tired, I am so snappy. I'm like, damn, calm down. Like in my head, like I'll notice I'll snap on somebody and be like, bro, ill. So when I'm tired, I'm not a good person.
At least you have the energy to snap. I just be chilling. I just get so quiet when I'm tired. I can't deal with people. So what can we do then if we're feeling physically tired? Is just the number one kind of solution for that is just getting more actual rest, or what else is there?
Well, so there are two types of things you can do to help with your physical, like get more physical rest. And so the passive one are the things we all know
Mm-hmm.
is like sleeping and napping, which are lovely. Please get as many naps as you can. Try to sleep as much as you can. But then there's also active physical rest, which I think is really important too. Especially, if you on your getting your body right and tight and
Mm-hmm.
feeling good in yourself, you have to make sure that you're taking rest days. So like low impact, steady state cardio, walking, stretching, doing yoga. Breathing exercises is another type of active physical rest, doing progressive muscle relaxation. So maybe like going to get a massage or going to get, muscle work done,
Mm-hmm.
stretching, hot baths and showers. I mean, there's so many things we can do that rest us physically without just physically like falling asleep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I notice when I get back into the habit of working out, I get so much more like sleepy just with working out. But I guess obviously that makes sense. It's like my body's like, okay, you've been extending yourself and now you need to just like relax. But like you get the best sleep when you have regular workout. So I love that feeling, except that I'm just like, man, I'm just so tired. But at least at least that
Exactly.
makes me feel like, okay, I'm tired for a reason. So that's a different feeling than when you're just like, dang, I've been getting all this sleep and I'm still like, ugh, I'm not making it. Um, so I think I mentioned this a little earlier, but I think like mental fatigue is one of the like biggest spaces of being tired that we don't necessarily directly address when we talk about being tired. Um, for me, when I'm mentally fatigued, that's when it's kind of like I'm just like I notice I'm tired, but I haven't done much that day. And then I'll realize like, oh, I was really in my head today, for example. So this is where I
Hmm.
would say like days where you're kind of really overthinking or, maybe worrying about something or whatever. Um, I'll know that it's just mostly mental if I have not done much, but I am just feeling so tired.
Yeah, that's the same for me. It's so interesting. Like you could be laying on the couch, but if you're overthinking, you could be exhausted just because you're expending all of that mental energy. And I also notice like
Hmm.
on those days, I'm also more irritable. I don't really like want to do anything. Like even things that I
Hmm.
normally enjoy, like if I have attitude and I'm like mentally exhausted, I don't want to do anything. I just feel kind of like foggy. Like if you've
Hmm.
ever had a day where maybe you're not even overthinking, but like you get enough sleep, you get up, you have your coffee, and you still just have this little fog or haze in your head before
Hmm.
you have meetings or tasks.
Do you know this? Could mental fatigue equal like depression, or could being depressed be like a form of mental fatigue? Is there a correlation there that you would know of?
I there is when I was doing research, so there like mental fatigue could be a symptom of depression. So I would say like if it was
Uh-huh.
chronic, definitely something to talk to your primary care physician about or your therapist. But if it's chronic, like that you are, feeling yourself being exhausted, you're not doing anything, and
Hmm.
you're sleeping, and maybe you're even exercising and stuff, but you just still feel really hazy and foggy, it very much could be a sign of anxiety or depression.
Hmm. A sign that you're doing too much in your head. Um,
Mm-hmm.
And then, so some ways I would say to beat mental fatigue, then a lot of times is around like ways to get out of your head. And so sometimes that can be adding in more system and routine. So, like throughout the day, if you're working on like with Pomodoro method, which we've talked about before, where you can work for 25, 30, whatever amount of minutes, then you take a 5 minute break, then you do that again. And it's kind of a cycle that gets you into the space of like being active, like physically,
Mm-hmm.
whether you're typing something in a meeting, whatever, but it gets you out of the zone of just like you're just there and in your head because you have to be doing things and then you take a break. So I think that's a good way to maybe jumpstart yourself out of a mental fatigue.
Yeah, the number one way that they were saying to get out of mental fatigue is to be in a meditative state. And to
Mhm.
your point, that's anytime that you're fully present in your body. So it's not just sitting here
Mhm.
like, oh, meditation, but it could be, you know, crafting something with your hands, maybe even doing the dishes.
Mhm.
Like if you're fully like just there, it's kind of hard to be, you know, in your head whenever you're physically present doing something. So in addition to the breaks, like adding little meditation or meditative exercises throughout your day, like whatever those little things might be, could
Mhm.
be very helpful for like mental fatigue.
Yeah, transcendental meditation, because you're doing your chant over and over. It's like that's the only thing you can really focus on, so you don't have space to be thinking. So there's times where you'll really get in the zone with something like that, for example, and you'll really realize like 15, 20 minutes later, you're like, oh, I really feel refreshed. Like that's the whole thing about TM, is that they say like when you're done, like you feel refreshed. So they say like for your afternoon session, don't do, close to bedtime or whatever, because you'll be meditating, but then it's like, yeah, your mind kind of like
Zing.
wakes back up. I have yet to really feel like that part of it, but also it's gotten harder since I've kind of chilled on it. I haven't done it as regularly, so it's hard. I'm not even getting like as deep as I used to, when I do meditate. So I think that's definitely a good reason to get back into it, because that really helps you to kind of center back into the present, like you were saying.
Man, I on Mondays and Thursdays are my busy days because I train
Hmm.
clients in the evening. And so between like my shift from like my all my stuff I'm doing in the morning and all my activities, my workouts into like serving clients, I always have to have like a little meditation break. Like even if it's in my car, like I'll get there and I'm like, look, 10 minutes to myself, just
Hmm.
breathe and do all that. And I be feeling mad refreshed. Like you said, is that
Hmm.
like, oh, who was like a second wind a little bit
Hmm.
to help me transition. And so I think like even like little like thinking about those breaks, you know, before you transition like from a meeting or into, you know, something else, or
Hmm.
before you go to dinner, so you can kind of breathe out whatever you were doing before it, is probably
Hmm.
a helpful thing to help you, you know, feel a little bit more mentally refreshed.
Hmm.
um
Absolutely. What's the next area where you can be fatigued or tired?
this one is near and dear to my heart because I've been here many a times. Emotional fatigue.
Mm.
As someone who has a lot of emotions, sometimes it can be exhausting, and it's similar to being stuck in your head, but I would just say it's to me it's like feeling more strongly. So let's say you get into a fight
Mhm.
with your partner, after y'all go through it and you done went through that, you know, conversation again in your head and all the things you should have said and this, after that I'd be so tired, like I'm exhausted after like arguing with people, after getting frustrated and having like my emotions flare up. Like I just feel like fatigue, almost like a physical and a mental fatigue, but I know it doesn't come from any of those things. And so it's just like kind of like I feel flattened like the little cartoons after they
Mhm.
get ran over by a steamroller.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think I'm starting to identify with this a lot more, because lately, as I'm like feeling my emotions, I'll speak more to them, or I'm learning to like sit with them a little bit more. And so to your point, it's kind of similar to like with mental fatigue, you might be in your mind more. With emotional, sometimes it is like tiring just processing that stuff. Kind of hard to actually even explain like how it feels, but even just to think about how, being aware of things, like being, the more aware you feel, the more like it feels tiring, because it's like I'm always paying attention to something instead of just like relaxing. But I think there is a point where sometimes you need to go through those times where you really are like really processing through, or you might be in a space where you are like super, super emotional. Um, and then I would guess that the best thing to do in those times is to mitigate it with like checking in with yourself, taking the time to yourself, talking to a therapist, journaling, like really sitting with your thoughts and sitting with the feelings, maybe even more as you like process through them. This is one of the ones I would say, like to work through it instead of it being kind of like, what's something I can do to like get away from it or try to avoid it or escape it.
Absolutely. And I think emotional fatigue is interesting because a lot of times we don't even give ourselves the space to feel our emotions. And we've already done a whole
Hmm.
episode on like how to actually feel your emotions, but they get stuck in our bodies and then they start to build up. So sometimes you might feel like crying and nothing happened. Like there's no
Hmm.
connection to why you're crying. And it could be just a buildup of emotions. So one of the best ways is to really just check in with yourself and like, oh, I'm sad. Anything happened? No, I'm just sad. Okay, process that sadness. Notice how it feels in your body. Cry, let it
Mhm.
out.
Mhm.
And then, keep it moving. If you want to journal or check in with a friend or even talk to a therapist, it's important to have those spaces where you can be vulnerable and be authentically yourself, and actually, share what's going on, because
Mhm.
that build up and whenever we're able to process our emotions or to share them with people, then they just start to build up.
Mhm. Um, and how would you differentiate those emotional or being emotionally tired to spiritually tired? Because I feel like mental, emotional, spiritual is all getting real close together. So talk to us about spiritual.
Spiritual, like fatigue, is more of a disconnect, I would say. It's
Mhm.
like your ability to connect with your higher self, or your, with God, or with your community, or with your purpose, like perhaps like something that is on a
Mhm.
higher level. So it's like this deeper sense of like belonging, of love, acceptance, and purpose. So it's probably in the same line as mental and emotional, but it's more about your connection to something outside of yourself. So if you've been feeling real disconnected just from the world that you're living in, that might be a sign that you are spiritually
Mhm.
fatigued.
How do you know when you're disconnected though? Not feeling connected on a spiritual or like in a grounded way.
I would say, like, if you if there's like a longing, like to be more involved, if you're feeling a little bit detached from things you normally like feel really in sync with, and so
Mhm.
it's the same process in emotional, is like thinking, is connecting with yourself, but just noticing like, oh man, I'm feeling really disconnected from like community. Normally I serve more and I give back and I
Mhm.
volunteer, and I just haven't done that. And so I would say that's probably a way, is if you're longing, like if you notice a sense of longing, if you're feeling detached or like you're not belonging, perhaps that could be one way.
Mhm.
Do you know
Yeah.
any other ones, or do you have any
Well,
thoughts on that?
what you're saying makes me think about when you find yourself, what's the word, like retreating, kind of, or like kind of like you don't want to spend time, or like kind of don't feel the purpose in the work you're doing. Like everything feels kind of like you're just kind of going through motions. I think that that maybe reflects to me a little bit in that space where it's like, okay, I just like, what's the point of everything? And like just re-grounding yourself into, the world and your purpose, etc. So I get that. And I think that that's almost when you're in that space where you feel disconnected like that, it's, I don't know if I feel as much tired as I just like, I don't feel energized, or like I don't feel, like I'm moving with any gusto, per se. So it's definitely like a kind of blah place to be for sure.
And then I think whenever you are feeling, and I think it's the same, I don't think it's necessarily like an exhausted feeling, but just blah, perhaps. Like whenever you are feeling kind of blah or disconnected from things that normally excite you, or from, your purpose or the work you're doing,
Mhm.
a couple ways, like adding prayer and meditation, back into it, getting back consistent with those
Mhm.
spiritual practices that ground you. And I would also say, like, go get involved in something that you care about. Go to a volunteer day, go donate some stuff, go talk to some people, go be a part of, this world, this vaster world that we live in. And I think that also helps remind us that, like, we are one little tiny piece of this really big pie, that we're living in,
Mhm.
and just reconnecting with the world around us.
Mhm. Yeah, but you can also feel socially tired in a way where, whether that comes from being around folks too much, that's how I would read that, or maybe being like too connected, and you just start to kind of like feel like you need to retreat in the same way, where it's like, all right, I need me time. Um, is can social be interpreted a different way?
So I think social is just about knowing yourself. So sometimes, like, introverts, if they are around people too much, like it's exhausting to constantly talk to
Mhm.
people. Whereas sometimes extroverts, if they haven't talked to people, like in the panini, they was struggling because they
Mhm.
need that like human connection. That's kind of what energizes them. And ambiverts are, a little bit of both. Like maybe they only like being around certain people, and that. So I think it's
Mhm.
just really noticing whenever you aren't doing what's in alignment for how
Mhm.
you get energized, and then noticing like, oh man, I feel really down or sad, or I feel, drained, like I've been overexerting too much effort, like
Mhm.
feeling alone, feeling attached, like those are all signs that you might be like socially exhausted or
So I guess
fatigued.
that's why, as an introvert, that's why I took it the way that I did, because I'm like, yeah, you get drained after, being in meetings all day or having to talk to people at get-togethers or whatever. And it's like, all right, your meter's getting low, and then you know what you need to do. But to your point, on the other side, if you've been at home by yourself or not being social, and you may be feeling drained, and maybe you need to be around some folks to get your energy back up. So show up, be present in whichever way fits for you, as far as your energy and you feeling like you're not getting fatigued by your social situations.
I think that that's huge. And it doesn't even have, if you're an introvert and you're like, look, I'm good not being around people. That could also be like, you have activities and stuff that you do to keep yourself
hmm
energized that maybe don't ain't got shit to do with nobody else, like going to do ceramics or whatever. Make sure that you're still showing up for those things that you care about.
hmm hmm
One type of exhaustion I thought was interesting, and it's like we've talked a little bit about it, but I haven't ever just like put the words together, was like sensory exhaustion. So when your
hmm
senses are overwhelmed. And I was like,
hmm
wow, we talk about, man, like after a long day on the computer, like, man, my eyes are tired. Or
Yeah.
sometimes I'll be
Yeah.
tired of listening to music or talking,
hmm
and but actually thinking about, wow, this is a type of rest and a type of exhaustion that we all know kind of exists, but I don't think I've ever really put those words together.
hmm Yeah, because like you said, I think about it with like phone, computer all day. But to your point, also there is some days where you're just like, I don't even really listen to music as much. Or I noticed recently that I'd gone through like a few months where I was like, I haven't been listening to anything. And usually I'll just always have something playing. But also it felt like that's what I needed at the time. So perhaps with sensory, it's like, how can you give yourself a break from everything? One of my friends the other day was talking about, have I ever been to, I forgot the name of the place. One of these places where they put you like in a dark room so you can't see, you can't hear anything. It's supposed to be like, I think it's like an oxygen tank, sensory deprivation thing.
Oh, okay.
Um, yeah, but I was like, oh, this sounds interesting. Like, and I imagine I'd probably go crazy in there because, it's probably just like you feel like you're just floating and it's just you and your brain.
Yo, float takes
But
are so cool.
I'm sure there's like ways to like take breaks from all the things. Sometimes have a day where you're not talking, or have a day where you're like away, or you go hiking, or do what you need to do to kind of get away from all the tech sometimes and just overwhelming yourself.
And it's so funny. I didn't even think about that, but I've done a float tank before. One of my
How was it?
classes, it was so cool. It was so cool. So they put you in this water that's your body temperature,
Mm-hmm.
and it has enough salt that you float. So it's like you literally can't even feel the water around you. You can't see
Mm-hmm.
anything. So you're supposed to just like it does kind of feel like you're in outer space essentially, or you're just kind of floating in your head. um One of our teachers gave that to us as a challenge. He was like, for more extroverted people or people who like being around people, like, y'all are going to go do this float tank. For introverts,
Mm-hmm.
y'all are going to go hang out with people and do this other stuff. And it was really cool because you're in there like, oh, this is cool. And it's like, oh damn, I'm really just in here like by myself. Like, where am I? What's happening
Was
right
it
now?
dark though? Or
Yeah,
this
it
one
was. You
wasn't
can't
dark?
you
Oh.
couldn't see anything. Like, none of your senses, you couldn't see anything, you couldn't smell
Mm-hmm.
anything. Your body couldn't even sense the water or the temperature because it's the exact same temperature as your
Uh-huh.
skin. And you're
Yeah, that
floating and
feels
you're not.
weird.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. So if y'all haven't done a float tank, definitely try it. Don't get salt in your eyes like I did, because that was a whole terrible experience afterwards. But things like that can be cool too if you really feel like, man, I'm just overwhelmed. I want to get away and really try to be with myself.
Mm-hmm.
Could be a really cool thing to do. I totally forgot
Hmm.
about those. Yeah, that's a very interesting way to like step out of that. Another one is Vipassana, which is like it's a 10-day retreat technically that you don't talk, you don't have your phone, you
Mm-hmm.
don't do stuff. That's a little extreme for today's society unless you're able to just get away for 10 days and not talk, but it might be cool, to your point, to have a day where you don't talk,
Mm-hmm.
or a
Yeah.
day where you're not on your phone, or a day where you just change up what you're doing. So that might be another cool way to disconnect and reconnect with yourself.
Yeah, yeah, and see if you feel like you're a little bit more rejuvenated after taking a little bit of a break. And I think with a lot of these things too, not just sensory, but also, it's easy to think about taking a day, 3 days off and like doing things. But I like to think about how you can incorporate in a little bit into each day. So even if it's like, before a certain time, you're not going to hop on your phone or your laptop or whatever, or towards your end of the day routine, with all of these things, right? You can kind of think about which of these areas you tend to get more tired. And now, like, how can you just do little tweaks throughout your day, just to be able to get a little bit more rest, and feel a little bit better. This last one, I identify with a lot. So you definitely need creative rest, or like rest so you can feel more creative. Sometimes, and again, these all like compound upon each other, because sometimes if you're just, whether you're physically tired, mentally, emotionally, whatever, I feel like it also kind of bogs down your creativity. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it's really like the more present you are, and the less you kind of have on your mind, it feels like that's when like ideas actually come to you. And so you may be struggling, and need more creative rest when you're feeling stuck, uninspired. If you're finding it harder to generate like new ideas and solutions. I felt like that kind of recently, where I was like, man, do I need to do something to like respark my brain? But I ended up just hiring some other people who can think for me instead. But because also sometimes you're like, all right, sometimes you need fresh blood and fresh ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but for sure, it's like you know, I want to get back into brainstorming a little bit more, and having that time to like exercise. I think you have to exercise that. But after a while, like you can be fatigued. So, what are some things that we can do if we might need some more creative rest?
So one I think is, if you can and you're not on a deadline, is to try to take off your requirement, like I want to have this solved by the end of today. Or
Mm-hmm.
maybe forcing yourself, or trying to force yourself with deadlines, is like limiting your creativity. I identify with that, because anytime, like, I'm more of a like, oh man, I get creative bursts and it's all this, I need to build up that muscle so I can use it whenever I want to. But it's harder for me when I put deadlines on myself. So
Mm-hmm.
try to like take off the parameters that you're trying to figure creativity into. Creativity is not very good about being shoved into boxes. That kind of defeats the
Mm-hmm.
point of it. And another important one is that doing, like, taking breaks, taking, like, going new places, like doing things that you don't normally do. It gives you an opportunity to be inspired, because so often our days kind of can get monotonous and we're doing the same thing. So there's no any type of stimuli to, like, plant that creative seed to help you, get out of that creative rut or that exhaustion that you've been in. So kind of mixing
Mm-hmm.
up your routine, trying to do something different, going to a new place and looking at some beautiful art or some plants or flowers or something that might stimulate
Mm-hmm.
you.
Mm-hmm. But Carlie, so here's the thing though, right? I think that sometimes you might be thinking that, right? Like I might be like, man, I want to feel a little bit more creative, or I'm not feeling as creative as I used to. And oh, here's a good idea. Let me see. There might be museums I can go to, this or that. But at the same time, it's also like, man, but I just feel too tired. Like I just don't even want to do that. Like I don't want to think about it. I don't want to plan. I don't want to, try to figure it out. I just want to not be as tired. What do you do like when you feel like that, where it's like you're tired beyond like really getting to like solutions, or wanting to move into that space?
I think you can just let yourself be. Because much like
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to force deadlines, anytime I try to force myself to do anything, it doesn't work. And most of
Mm-hmm.
the time, when your body is that exhausted, whether it be any of these types of exhaustion, physical, mental, emotional, social, spiritual, sensory, whatever is going on, sometimes you just need to let yourself be. And in the absence of trying to fix things, the solutions always come up. Like, you just have to stop trying to force it. So whether you're trying to force yourself to get out, to go be inspired, just kind of chill
Mm-hmm.
for a little bit. Let yourself take a nap. Let yourself relax. Let yourself do nothing. And then inevitably those things will start to come. But I think, the pressure we put on ourselves to do all these things also makes us tired. And so just
Yeah.
allowing yourself to be, and thinking about just like ways you can build in little steps in your day. So a lot of these are like, go to a float tank, go to a museum. It's like, okay, you don't have to do all that, but like think about how
Mm-hmm.
you can, really serve yourself and get these moments of rest with yourself each and every day. We just talked about routines, so see what things you can bring into your routine. Similar to you, I'm going to take time this week to see kind of where I might feel more exhausted. I know yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
today's Sunday, so y'all gonna get this on Monday, but on Saturday I was teaching. I ran a workshop with Lala at Thrive for helping people, setting
Mm-hmm.
visions and building routines and affirmations and all that. And when I got home, I was done. Like, I physically, emotionally, like couldn't do anything. And Lala called me, she said, "Dog, are you
Mhm.
tired?" I was like, "I can't get up off my couch right now." And she's like, "Yeah, it's different when you're like pouring into people." And so
Uh-huh.
even thinking about, whether you're some type of boss or leader or manager, and you're pouring into people you're working with or you're teaching, like how much energy you're exerting into others, like
Mhm.
noticing when you're exhausted there. Last thought is also in detoxing. Our bodies can be exhausted because there's a buildup, like physically, of like things that it needs to clear out, or toxins and different stuff. But also even in our lives, like all the other things
Mhm.
that you're letting like yourself listen to, watch, be around, the people you're being around, the energy you're consuming, like it all matters. And so, whenever you take the time to detox off of that stuff, you might naturally feel your energy start to boost up. So also
Mhm.
just thinking about not what all can you do, but maybe also what can you cut out to help yourself be able to rest a little better.
Yeah, that's big because a lot of the things are things to cut out for sure. Um, we are on the cusp of February, my favorite month personally. I love everything about February, especially being in LA, so not even in the cold anymore. But we have Black History Month programming for you. To all of our listeners, we know like we've been doing a lot of talking ourselves the last quite a few episodes. We've had a couple of guests though. And so for Black History Month, we wanted to make sure that we were talking to a different expert each week that is in the community, whether it's around mental health, business, sex and relationships, etc. So we're really excited about the next set of interviews and guests that we brought to the couch for you all. We're definitely going to do our best to like promote them each time and make sure you hear them out, learn from them, because we definitely got a lot of gems from the different folks that we spoke to for this month. And we really wanted to celebrate our Black community with the people that we're talking to. So we're excited about that. And we hope you enjoy the next few episodes.
Yeah, super excited. I'm so hyped. Can't wait. And some of the topics, actually, a lot of the topics are things that y'all have asked about or shown
Uh-huh.
interest in. And, we can't always be just us talking. So glad that we were able to bring in such amazing people for you.
Right.
I'm super, super hyped. But this question of the week is, Alexia, in which category will you get more rest this week?
I'm gonna do the spiritual focus. I think sometimes it's like a bigger disconnect outside of just like feeling tired, because I definitely get a lot of sleep every night for the most part. But um, a way more meditation for sure. I think that's going to be the biggest key in just a lot of things, get my act together. More meditation, which will put me, you know how like you do REM for sleep, but there's something else, some stage we get to in transcendental that I just need to
Mm-hmm.
practice it more to be able to get back to that space. That's where I want to focus for sure. What about you?
I am going to do creative
Mm-hmm.
rest this week, but I'm challenging myself instead of like these big things like going, to a museum and stuff, which is cool.
Mm-hmm.
I love museums, they're great. I'm going to see what things around me and in my space I can do with like little to no effort so that I can start to build that into my routine so I can keep that creative muscle getting stronger.
Mm-hmm. Creative can probably be like cooking something new or like, just little things like that too. Drawing, picking up some pens, try to sketch something in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
So to your point, yeah, it doesn't have to be wild, but also I think to something you said earlier, you can start doing something and just like, you don't have to force it either. Like if you're like, yeah, this isn't really, I'm over it, or, I'm tired, or this isn't it, then like, let's move and figure out which, other space we might can try to do something in and maybe feel refreshed. So I'm going to start with spiritual. You got creative. And for those listening, let us know in what space you're going to try to get some more rest this week. Interested in hearing your thoughts on that. And we're excited for you to get into our next few episodes and interviews as we celebrate Black History Month.
Yeah. So thank y'all for tuning in, and we will see y'all next week.
Peace.